very well aware, this is a very important topic, and it is very timely to have this particular public forum, given the discussion that's been out there in the public domain on the quality of data in recent months. Now, clearly, good quality data is a fundamental building block for work in very many aspects of our lives. And as such, data can affect the lives of just about everybody in society. Often you hear people say, well, this stuff about data is all very esoteric, it's fine for researchers, it's their business. But if you drill down a little bit more, you find not only is it important for research, it certainly is, because without good data, it's not possible to do credible research. But it's also important for policymakers. Increasingly around the world, there is a move towards evidence-based policy making. Even without that move, data was important, but it's becoming even more important. And if you go down the route of evidence-based policy making, clearly then the evidence has to be sound. So not just researchers, important for policymakers. Also important for the business people and private sector, because companies make business plans on the basis of data that's out there. And if you make your plans on the basis of faulty data, then clearly your shareholders, your workers, all get affected. Even your consumers, all the stakeholders in the business sphere get affected. But there's also one other point I'd like to make before I hand over to people who know much more than I do on this subject. And that is, if you look at the crises that have hit two countries, one is Greece and the other is Argentina. Now the causality is pretty complex. There are a number of reasons why these countries had these very devastating crises in recent years. But part of the narrative was manipulating data. It meant that in both those countries, people did not know how bad things were until it was too late. The people didn't know, the business people didn't know, the policymakers didn't know, the international financial institutions didn't know, the rating agencies didn't know, all because the data was massaged. And then suddenly, the whole thing blew. And then overnight, of course, everybody shifts. And you get what people call a stop, country doesn't get any money, and you have a massive crisis. And sadly, while everybody suffers, the people who suffer most, the people who bear the brunt of the adjustment to these types of crises, tend to be the poor and the bottom. So, and what the point I'm trying to make really is that data is crucial, is important for everybody in society. Now, enough from me. We've got two really, I think, extremely eminent people as qualified and as capable as anybody in the country to speak on this subject, two ex-directors of the Statistics Department of the Central Bank. So let me, I think Professor Colombage is going to speak first. Professor Colombage is a former director of statistics at the Central Bank and a former senior professional of social studies in the economics department of the University of Sri Lanka. And he has published extensively. And I was reminding him, by the way, all three of us, had careers in the Central Bank. And I remember Dr. Colombage for this. A number of us, including me, we went out and took advantage of the research postgraduate training that the Central Bank gave, came back and then tended to forget about research. But Dr. Colombage was one of the people who was highly committed to research right through his career. And so he's very well qualified to speak on this subject. And the title of his presentation is going to be Quality Assurance in Statistics, Producer Perspectives in the Light of International Practices.
My presentation will focus on quality assurance in statistics, producer perspectives in the light of international practices. This is the outline. I will give a brief introduction why we need quality assurance for statistics. Then we'll discuss about international standards for statistics. Then we move on to Sri Lanka's case, and finally I have some concluding remarks. Of course, you will also have similar sentiments. So, why do we need quality assurance for statistics? As we all know, there are two main statistical agencies producing statistics and information for Sri Lanka, that is Census and Statistics Department and Central Bank of Sri Lanka. As we all know, we heavily depend on Census and Statistics Department for data, particularly household income and expenditure survey data, labor force survey data at the micro level, and at the macro level data at the macro level. Census and Statistics Department is involved in producing national accounts, prices and wages, etc. In fact, until recently, the central bank was also involved in producing national accounts data, and during our time we had difficulty in reconciling the two sets of data. Now the central bank has got rid of that problem, and now it is the responsibility of the Census and Statistics Department to produce national accounts data. Then, as regards central bank, the central bank is mainly responsible for producing macro level data, including balance of payment, financial sector data, fiscal sector, money and banking, etc. And also, three of us were engaged in consumer finances survey, which was a comprehensive survey carried out by the central bank until 2004. I think that was the last survey carried out by Anila. But since then, I have no idea whether the central bank is continuing or it has abandoned the consumer finances survey data, which is very sad, because it gives an alternative set of data at the household level, particularly focusing on consumer finances and socio-economic conditions of the country. As the chairman just now mentioned, decision makers both in private and public sectors heavily depend on statistics. Therefore, it is the responsibility of the statistical agencies to produce accurate and consistent statistics. But recently, of course, this has been an ongoing problem, not only in Sri Lanka, but also in other countries. There have been doubts about GDP, inflation, poverty, and unemployment data. Given the short time, I'll give you one example. As we all know, according to the Census and Statistics Department, the poverty level has come down drastically during the last couple of years. This is how it has gone down. In 2002, poverty headcount ratio was 23%. It came down to 15% in 2007 and 8.9% in 2010. And by 2012, it has come down to 6.5%. How did it happen? It can happen in so many ways, but basically it should be supported by poverty reduction, should be supported by economic growth. Let us see how the economic growth has occurred. I have taken the inter-survey period averages of GDP growth rates. So just before, up to 2002, if you take 6-year average, just before 2002, the average GDP growth rate was only 4.5%, and it went up to 6.4%. So we can't see any substantial or significant acceleration of GDP growth between 2002 and 2007. But in spite of that, poverty has gone down from 22% to 15%. Similarly, we can see the growth rate. In fact, the growth rate between 2007 and 2010 came down, but poverty has gone down to around 19% from 15% in 2007. Of course, there was an acceleration of GDP growth after the end of the war to 7.3%. That means between 2010 and 2012, average GDP growth rate was around 7.3%. But again, there was a considerable reduction in poverty. So how do we explain this? The other thing is there can be a reduction in poverty if there is a kind of a redistribution of income in favor of the poor. Let us see whether it has happened. Now again, I am using the same poverty reduction figures, poverty head count ratios, red bars, and the blue color bars show the income share of the poorest 20%. As you can see, there is kind of a stagnant, the poorest households' income share was almost stagnant. So we can't see any substantial acceleration, increase in GDP growth or a redistribution of income towards the poor. So these are unexplained patterns of poverty reduction. I'm not saying that these data are wrong, but there is some inconsistency, and the Department of Census and Statistics or the Central Bank of Sri Lanka haven't given any, haven't justified the drastic reduction of poverty against this modest growth, modest economic growth and stagnant income share of the poorest. So those are the things that we have to look at. You can find similar inconsistencies with regard to unemployment data, inflation data, so on and so forth, but I am not going to discuss those things. Instead, I would like to focus on international standards with regard to with regard to improvement of quality of statistics. What do we mean by statistical quality? Traditionally, quality of statistics meant only accuracy of statistics. But currently, there are broader dimensions that should be taken into account when we talk about the quality of statistics. One is relevance, timeliness, accessibility of data, clarity, coherence, comparability, efficiency, etc. So there are so many dimensions, and it is the responsibility of statistical agencies to improve the quality of data by taking into account these dimensions. So improving statistical quality means enhancing the fitness of data to meet the expectations of the users, because end users are the main beneficiaries of statistics. Unless the statistics are not good enough for the users, then the statistics, those statistics will be useless. So as regards the quality of data, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. In fact, there are accepted international codes of practices adopted by many countries, particularly the developed countries. And at the international level, statistical quality management was given greater focus since the mid-1980s. So there are common quality management tools developed by various international agencies and of course national statistical agencies. And the most important among them is the International Codes of Practices launched by the UN Statistical Commission, which was produced by an expert group, and it is called the Generic Quality Assurance Framework. Then also there is this Quality Assurance Framework of the European Statistical System, IMF Data Quality Assessment Framework, Statistics Canada Quality Assurance Framework, and also for Latin America there is a Code of Good Practice in Statistics. So those are the major codes of practices adopted by several countries. I have extracted this from the National Quality Assurance Framework published by the UN Statistics Division. As you can see, there are it's a long list, and quality context, quality concepts and frameworks, quality assurance guideline, and that is the most important thing. Under that, under quality assurance guidelines, there are several sub-themes: managing the statistical system, managing the institutional environment, managing statistical processes, managing statistical outputs. Then item number 4, quality assessment and reporting. Under the quality assessment and reporting, each statistical agency is supposed to reassess or assess the quality of statistics. And finally, quality and other management frameworks. Then come performance management, resource management, ethical standards, so on and so forth. So there's a long list, and I'm not sure whether the central bank or the Census and Statistics Department has taken any initiative to adopt these practices. Of course, the Census and Statistics Department has initiated some practices with regard to introducing metadata, and also both the central bank and Census and Statistics Department have adopted the general data dissemination system of the IMF. So those are positive initiatives. I will talk about those positive steps at a later stage. Let us discuss a few NQAF. NQAF means National Quality Assurance Frameworks. NQAF 4, that is item number 3B, NQAF 4, that is assuring professional independence. So the statistical agencies are supposed to develop, produce and disseminate statistics without any political or other interference from government agencies, private sector entities or persons. So it is very important that statistical agencies should be autonomous bodies, and they should be independent of political interference. For instance, in France, the French law on statistics states that the conception, production and dissemination of official statistics are carried out in full professional independence. In Sri Lanka, to my knowledge, there is no mention about the autonomy of Census and Statistics Department, which comes under the purview of Ministry of Finance and Planning. Of course, Director General of Department of Census and Statistics is here. He may correct me if I am wrong. So professional independence is critically important. For example, Statistics Canada. Statistics Canada is the agency of agency responsible for collecting statistics in Canada. So in statistics Canada, there's a corporate management framework, and the quality is inherent in that corporate management framework, and statistics Canada has given high priority to quality assurance in the statistical survey process. So this is the final outcome. Canadians have access to timely, relevant and quality statistical information on Canada's changing economy and society. So that is the ultimate objective of collecting and disseminating statistics, and it is based on relevance, trust, and there are 3 dimensions: quality, objectivity, and confidentiality. Then comes access and stewardship. So corporate management framework emphasizes that human resources, risk management, and governance are important pillars in the institutional management of Statistics Canada. So in Canada, there is high priority for statistical quality. Then we go to NQA 16 of the UN framework, that is assuring timeliness and punctuality. It is mentioned that statistical agencies should minimize delays in making data available. Timeliness means how fast the data are released. If a survey is conducted in 2013 December, it should be released maybe within 6 months or so. So there's a strict calendar. And punctuality, whether the data are released on the date promised, so whether the data is promised on that particular date. So there are 2 aspects, timeliness and punctuality. In the case of Sri Lanka's Census and Statistics Department, there is an advanced data release calendar. It's available on the website, so that is a welcome development. However, we have observed that there are delays in releasing the final results of census of population and also particular surveys. One good example is the 2000 population census which was held in 2011, and the final report is still not released, and only a preliminary report based on 5% of the sample is released. Then NQA 19, managing metadata. Metadata means data about data. That means once a statistical agency starts a survey, it should give disseminate the actual information, full information, from the beginning of the survey to the final report of the survey. So there is a process, and in countries like India, metadata is released on their websites. So it is the responsibility of statistical agencies to provide information covering the underlying concepts, variables, classifications used, the methodology of data collection and processing, and indications of the quality of the statistical information. So there are so many attributes with regard to metadata. So in the case of Sri Lanka's surveys carried out by the Census and Statistics Department and other statistical agencies, sometimes the user may not have full access to the metadata or the full information about the process, the whole process of the survey. So that is the missing link. Again, if you go back to Statistics Canada, there is a thing called integrated metadata base. That is a repository of information on each of nearly 400 active surveys. So IMDb is available to outside users, so they can access to the metadata through the integrated metadata base. And there are also other examples like Australian National Health Information Knowledge Base. It is an electronic storage site for health metadata. Then also United States Health Information Knowledge Base is another example. having followed these quality improvement mechanisms, now we come to the quality assessment and reporting. This means that a statistical agency must evaluate their survey processes through various mechanisms. So they have to assess product in terms of relevance, accuracy and reliability, timeliness and punctuality, coherence, compatibility, accessibility and clarity. So there are so many attributes. So each of the above dimensions is assessed by using quality indicators. So that you can develop various quality indicators to assess the performance of statistical agency with regard to each of those items. For example, if you want to check accuracy, you can say how complete is the sample frame, how representative is the sample frame, so on and so forth. So quality assessment could be conducted by internal and external teams. But with regard to Sri Lanka's statistical surveys, I don't think that there is a quality assurance mechanism. I can recall what is happening in the higher education sector. About 4 or 5 years ago, the UGC initiated a quality assurance scheme for the higher education system in Sri Lanka. Professor Siribanga Beratna is here. He can explain it further. So even at the university system, there was resistance to accept that kind of quality assurance mechanism, because that will hurt the status quo of the university system. But over the years, the UGC and the Quality Assurance and Accreditation Council have been able to convince the university community to adopt these quality assurance practices. So in this regard, you can do peer reviewing. For instance, now I am making a presentation here. One of my peers can come here and observe my presentation, and he can point out the shortcomings, weaknesses in the presentation. Similarly, in the lecture notes, course material, you can assess. And for instance, to assess a department in the Colombo University, a team may come from Ruhuna University or Peradeniya University. So that is the quality assessment mechanism practiced in the higher education system. Similarly, I think it is time now to adopt a similar practice in the not only in the Census and Statistics Department, but also in other statistical agencies. Initially, there would be resistance, but it is necessary if we are to improve quality assurance. So initially, the statistical agency itself can conduct self-assessment by an internal team, and also later on it can invite external teams from other agencies locally or from other countries. So such statistical assessment systems are well established in some countries like Canada, Netherlands, South Korea, UK, USA, and in several other countries. So as I mentioned earlier, there are positive initiatives taken by the Census and Statistics Department. One good example is Lanka Data, which is a repository of the national data files. It holds about over 350 data files from different surveys, and it adheres to international standards in archiving microdata such as Dublin Core Metadata Initiative. And also both the Census and Statistics Department and Central Bank have been participants in the General Data Dissemination System of the IMS. IMF, and information and data are supposed to be submitted to IMF under Article 4. So in spite of those good positive initiatives, still we find some shortcomings with regard to the quality of statistics in Sri Lanka. A major drawback is that we do not have a national quality assurance framework for statistics. And Central Bank and Statistics Department, Census and Statistics Department and Central Bank are somewhat silent with regard to quality assurance, because there is no mention about the quality of data of those two institutions. Of course, three of us may be culprits because it was not available during that time, but quality was not an issue. Fortunately, it was not an issue during that time. And also, QA is explicitly available in websites of statistical agencies in some countries like Australia and Canada. And unfortunately, Census and Statistics Department and Central Bank are not very receptive to user feedbacks. We have observed how the Director General of Census and Statistics reacted to the criticism on national accounts data a couple of months ago. And there is no discussion about the shortcomings of statistics, and they can be more transparent, then they can improve the statistics, and also the credibility of the institutions can be sustained. So I have a few concluding remarks. So quality assurance is not given a prominent place in the Census Department or the Central Bank or any other statistical agency. Hence, credibility of data are questionable, and we may recommend perhaps the CEPA can take initiatives to press for a national quality assurance framework for statistics, broadly following the UN guidelines, but we can adapt it to suit to our environment. And quality culture needs to be inculcated among the statistical officers, and user feedbacks need to be accommodated in the statistical processes. So it is very important. I know that Census and Statistics Department conducts user workshops before the survey starts, but this can be more institutionalized and regularized. And finally, I would like to emphasize that the professional independence of statistical agencies is vital to have quality statistics. So with these remarks, I would like to conclude my presentation, and I would like to answer if you have any questions. Thank you very much.